Hey everyone, I'm so excited to show you guys this video today because we are making vegan pho. Honestly, if I could have only one meal for the rest of my life, it would be pho. It's such a bowl of wholesome, wonderful goodness. I grew up eating pho and it was one of my favorite foods. When I transitioned to a plant-based diet, I was quite sad because good vegan pho was hard to come by. So I decided to make my own as authentically as possible. I'm so excited to show you guys this recipe and how much delight a bowl of pho can bring you. I'll also be showing you guys how to make these classic Vietnamese drinks as well, a plant-based version of course. We're going to start off with the pho broth. The broth is perhaps the most important thing in any pho recipes. Usually it does take about an hour or so, even up to 90 minutes to simmer out the broth. The reason why it takes such a long time is because we're using all these wonderful spices, fruits and vegetables to bring out the flavour. If you are running low on time, you can definitely simmer it for around 30 minutes or so, but that would be the least amount of time that I would go for. Of course, you can also buy ready-made pho stock from the shops, but I promise you that making it the traditional way will absolutely blow your mind. There is an element of sweetness in vegan pho broths that we'll be bringing about today by using 1 corn cob cut into 4s, 2 pears and 2 apples cut in half. These are sweeter fruits that naturally sweeten the broth and can reduce the amount of refined sugars used later in the recipe. We also add in vegetables that are more neutral in flavour to provide a beautiful base for the pho broth. We'll be using a whole white radish cut into 3rds, 3 peeled carrots and 1/4 of a cabbage with its loose outer leaves peeled. Cut the vegetables so they fit into your stock pot, but you don't want them too small. And while we're at the chopping board, cut 2 onions in half and remove their skin. Cut out a thumb-sized piece of ginger and peel the skin. We'll be using the ginger and the onions for the broth as well, but we're going to do something else with them just beforehand. So usually when my family makes pho, we make it in a large stock pot and we end up getting 4 or 6 bowls or even more out of it. I remember when I was younger, Mum would make so much that we ended up having pho for the next 3 days. As a kid, it was too much, but now when I'm older and I've moved out of home, I just wish that Mum would do that again for me. Here I'm using an 11.6 litre stock pot. Place the prepared fruits and veggies into the pot and fill it up to the top with water at the sink. You can pour the water in from the kettle just to be safer. Turn on the heat to medium-high and allow the water to come to a boil. You can pop the lid on partially to let it come to a boil faster. Meanwhile, in a pan over low-medium heat, drizzle some olive oil over the top. Place the onions face down onto the pan and don't forget the ginger. We're going to saute these guys to bring out their flavours a bit more before popping them into the stock pot as well. The aim is to slightly char them so there's a subtle smoky flavour in the broth. For an oil-free alternative, char the onions and ginger on a grill or you can place them in the air fryer. When done, transfer them to the stock pot that should be starting to boil. Reduce the heat to let it simmer and don't forget to pop on the lid partially so we don't lose the water. So guys, the beautiful pho aroma comes from these spices. That's the secret to getting that beautiful pho broth. These spices include cloves, coriander and fennel seeds, cinnamon sticks, star anise, black cardamom and licorice root. The good thing is that you guys don't have to buy these spices individually. They often come pre-packaged at Asian grocery stores. If you can't find any at your local store, then don't worry, we have the full ingredients list on our website. We're going to toast these spices in the pan now to intensify their flavours. This is super important if you don't plan on simmering the stock for a few hours, and even if you do, I recommend doing this so that the pho aroma comes out beautifully. You don't have to add in more oil and just toast for a few minutes until it becomes fragrant. Remove the pan from heat and carefully transfer the spices into a simmering mesh pouch. These little pouches often come with the pre-packaged spices, but you can use a cheesecloth or something similar. Make sure to tie the neck of the pouch very securely because you don't want any of the spices, especially the small seeds, to leak out into the broth. If you're confident that you tied it securely, you can just pop the bag into the stock pot. I grew up seeing my mum tie the bag into a single chopstick, kind of like a fishing rod, and letting it rest there, so now I do the same. Although this is the more common way of simmering out the pho spices, I want to show you guys another way. You can simmer the spices in a smaller pot or saucepan and gradually ladle the flavours into the stock pot. This lets you control how intense the pho aroma will be in the final broth, and this is great if you like a milder pho flavour. Anyway, the few hours of simmering begins. In this video, I simmered the stock for around 4 hours, so we'll see you soon. Just kidding guys, while we wait, I'm going to show you one of my favourite Vietnamese condiments that is often served with pho at restaurants. We're going to make these sweet and sour pickled onions. These onions complement the pho really well and they're so easy to make. Thinly slice the onions, and to give them an extra crunch, we're going to give them an ice bath. Let them sit in the ice water for a few minutes. Drain the onions and transfer them into a pickling jar or bowl. Pour in a 1/4 cup of white vinegar, a 1/4 cup of white sugar, and 1/2 tablespoon of salt. Mix everything together and adjust to taste. Let them sit and they should be ready to serve when the pho is done. Traditionally, pho is a beef noodle soup, but today, because we're making vegan pho, we'll be using a variety of alternatives. So we'll be using different types of mushrooms, tofu puffs, dried bean curd sticks, and also soy protein slices. These are my favourite things to put in my vegan pho, but it's definitely up to you. Mushrooms are really nice here because of their texture and they absorb the flavours quite well. Slice the mushrooms into bite-sized pieces. My favourite mushrooms to use are oyster, shimeji, and shiitake mushrooms. You can definitely use fresh shiitake mushrooms, but I'm using dried ones, which I soak in hot water first to soften them up. Drain the water, and a tip for these is to cut the stems off because they tend to stay quite hard even when they're cooked. If you're familiar with vegetarian or vegan Vietnamese dishes, you'll know that dried bean curd sticks are commonly used in the cuisine. They're basically tofu skin and super yummy. I soak them in water so they soften up enough to be cut into smaller pieces. Towards the end of the simmer time, we're going to season the broth. I like to do this while the veggies are still in there so I can choose to simmer them for longer if I want to. To enhance the sweetness of the broth, we use a type of sweetener called rock sugar. This is widely available in Asian grocery stores. I'm using around 50 grams here because I found that the fruits had already sweetened the broth up significantly. Add in 2 to 3 tablespoons of mushroom seasoning. Mushroom seasoning is one of my favourite vegan pantry staples as it adds a beautiful umami flavour to any dish. And then add in 3.5 tablespoons of sea salt and mix to combine. I usually start off with these numbers and then adjust it to my liking. I feel like taste testing the pho broth and making adjustments is part of the cooking process. Some people also do prefer the pho broth on the sweeter side, while others like it quite mellow. And when you're super happy with the flavours and don't want to simmer anymore, take out the spice bag. Scoop out the veggies, making sure to take out everything, especially the ones at the bottom of the pot. At this point, sometimes I look at my partner and I go, we really should have just gone out to eat pho, shouldn't we? But honestly, there's nothing better than homemade pho, and we're nearly there guys, so it's all going to be worth it at the end. It's time now to add in the pho fillings to the pot. Because I used a variety of different fillings, I added just a cup of each to balance it out. We can always add more later on. Pop the lid back on and let it cook under a simmering heat for a few minutes. So with pho, we use rice noodles, which is also known as banh pho in Vietnamese. There are 2 types that you can buy at the Asian grocery stores, fresh ones or dried ones. I do prefer the fresh ones because of its softer texture, so we'll be using that today. But honestly, give both a try and see which one you like. The fresh rice noodles are often coated in oil to prevent them from drying out and sticking to each other. I do like to give the noodles a gentle rinse under cold water to wash up any excess oil. The water will also help the noodle strands to separate. Try to handle the rice noodles as gently as possible as they can break quite easily. Tofu is such a great protein source to have in pho. I recommend using firm or semi-dry tofu because they can hold their structure well in the soup. Today I'll be using tofu puffs, but instead of cooking them in the soup, which you can do, I'll be air frying them for around 5 minutes before adding them later into my pho dish when everything is already served. This is just a personal preference because I don't like my tofu going too soggy. When you're ready to eat, serve the noodles into bowls. I find that the heat of the soup warms up the noodles enough, so that's why I don't heat them up beforehand. If you do prefer your pho bowl extra hot, then you can pop them in the microwave or immerse the noodles in some hot water for a few minutes. Just make sure to separate the strands of pho well too. Ladle in the broth and the fillings. A tip is to be quite generous with the pho soup because you'll find that it runs out before the noodles do. Pho is often served with a plate of herbs and veggies that you garnish on top. These herbs are Thai basil leaves and sawtooth, which are easily found at Asian grocery stores. Fresh mung bean sprouts are also garnished on top, as well as spring onions. If you're keen for some spice, fresh chilies definitely go hand in hand with a pho bowl. And here you go guys, this is my vegan pho bowl. It's a delicious bowl of love and it brings me so much joy when I cook it for my family and friends. So generally, pho is often served with just the noodles and stock. We eat it in a shared setting with all of the fresh veggies and herbs laid out for everyone to share. Everyone garnishes their own bowl to their preference as well. The table usually has a bottle of hoisin sauce and sriracha. Of course, pho is not complete without a Vietnamese fruit smoothie like avocado or jackfruit, or a Vietnamese iced coffee. So I want to show you now how I eat my vegan pho. So I start off with the herbs, the Thai basil leaves. You take the leaves off the stem and then you can rip them up. And then sprinkle them all over the bowl. And I do the same with the sawtooth herbs. So I rip them up as well. And then you sprinkle them over the bowl. Oops. And then I add in a handful of the mung bean sprouts, like that. And then don't forget the spring onions, sprinkle them over. I also do add in a squeeze of lemon. This does depend on the broth that I'm eating though, so I will adjust it according to taste. And then sometimes if I do prefer it quite chilly, I slice in some chili, but obviously this is optional. I find that these herbs and veggies make such a difference to the pho because they add so much flavour and freshness to the bowl. So this part is where you can play around with the flavours of the broth a bit. You can add in some hoisin sauce and some sriracha. Personally, I do like adding in less than half a teaspoon of hoisin sauce to my soup. I don't add in too much because I feel like it can overpower the pho aroma. On the other hand, my fiance absolutely loves squeezing in the hoisin sauce and the sriracha at every pho place that we go to, and he just absolutely loves it. So basically, it's up to your personal preference. One of the best things about pho is dipping the veggies into hoisin sauce and sriracha. Grab 2 small dipping plates and scoop out a generous amount of the sauces and you'll be amazed. Of course, you can eat pho however you like. There is never a wrong way to enjoy pho, but there are a few ways that I personally like to eat it so I can enjoy all of the beautiful flavours. I like to fill my spoon up with the stock and add some noodles in. Top it up with some mushroom or soy slices that's been dipped in the hoisin sauce or sriracha. I also like to add in more veggies and eat them with the noodles to give it a refreshing taste. There are so many possibilities to keep the taste interesting, and that's what I love about pho. And while you guys are still here with me, I'm going to show you how to quickly make a vegan version of the Vietnamese avocado smoothie. Slice and scoop out the flesh of 1 ripe avocado. Place them into a blender. I'll be using my NutriBullet today, and scoop in a few tablespoons of vegan condensed milk. I usually do about 3 heaped tablespoons. I have a recipe for the condensed milk on my blog and I'll link it in the description below. Otherwise, you can buy vegan condensed milk, they're usually in the coconut form, at your local supermarket. They're widely available nowadays. Add in some ice cubes and a 1/3 cup of plant-based milk. Blend it all together and serve. You can adjust the consistency and sweetness to your liking. What you'll get is such a creamy, luscious smoothie that goes amazingly with pho. And guys, before you go, I do want to make this pho meal complete. I want to show you how to make some vegan Vietnamese iced coffee. It's a slow drip coffee, so you'll need to buy the coffee filter set, which is available at Asian grocery stores. I think there's one available on Amazon as well. In a cup, scoop in 3 heaped tablespoons of vegan condensed milk so a nice thick bottom layer forms. You can add more if you want to, or less if you prefer your coffee stronger. Scoop in 2 to 3 tablespoons of some Vietnamese ground coffee into the filter. The brand that is quite popular is called Trung Nguyen. You can find that again at Asian grocery stores. When you're done, assemble the filter set on top of the cup and pour boiling water through. As it's dripping down, fill up another cup with ice cubes. When the coffee has stopped dripping down, mix together the hot coffee and condensed milk until they're combined. Pour it over the ice cubes, and there you go guys, this is Vietnamese iced coffee. Some of the ice will melt under the heat of the coffee, which will nicely soften the flavours. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I had so much fun filming it and sharing how beautiful pho is with you guys. If you guys like this video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to my channel. It will really mean a lot and it will help the community grow. If you would like the full pho recipe, check out my blog at embodynourish.com. I've also linked it in the description box below. Thank you guys again, and I'll see you next time.